There's an old saying, money talks and BS walks. And in no sport is that saying more appropriate than the sport of boxing. Now, I'm not saying there's any BS involved in this particular situation I'm about to describe, but given the organization involved, it's a possibility. So the headline reads, WBC president says Errol Spence's medical report was satisfactory. We support him. Mauricio Sulaiman, to quote him directly, said, unfortunately, during the mandatory exams that boxers must undergo, an injury was detected in the retina of Spence's left eye, and he had to undergo surgery, which is going to keep him out of the ring for some time. Now, Pacquiao will face Cuban Yordenis Ugas. I received an emotional letter from our champion Errol Spence Jr., in which he thanks the World Boxing Council for giving him the support to keep him as champion. The easy way out would have been to sanction Pacquiao versus Ugas for our title, or also to open an interim, but it was not like that. The WBC ratified support for him, and the medical report was satisfactory, so he will return to the ring as soon as healed and safely as possible. The welterweight division is perhaps the most talented at the moment, and there are a lot of fights that could take place in the months and years to come. Hopefully, the promoters will get it right, and they will give the fans what they deserve, the greatest fights. We wish Manny the best of luck this Saturday, and it would be wonderful if he closed his cycle contesting the WBC green and gold belt that has accompanied him throughout his career. All right, those are the words of Mauricio Sulaiman. Interesting that he dropped the word cycle in there. Just accidental pun, I'm sure. Now, the WBC is an acronym for World Boxing Council. But back in the days, I'm not sure if James Toney was the originator of this phrase, but it's certainly the first time I'd heard it. James Toney referred to the World Boxing Council, the WBC, as We Be Crooks. That's the acronym that he has for WBC, We Be Crooks. And throughout the years, I've seen no end of foolishness and questionable behavior from the WBC. It's not to say everything they've done has been bad, but they've done a lot of really, really questionable things right up until the current day. I mean, in recent weeks, Mauricio Sulaiman has taken his level of scumbaggery up several notches, which I scarcely believed possible prior to him actually accomplishing this feat. So I wouldn't put it past the WBC to be turning a blind eye. Again, no pun intended. If Errol Spence really has faked an injury. Again, I'm not saying Errol Spence has. I'm just cognizant of the reality that people do fake injuries in boxing for various different reasons. That's all. And when Mauricio Sulaiman comes out saying the easy thing to do would be to make Pacquiao versus Ugas, no, it wouldn't. The easy thing to do is to allow Errol Spence to remain champion, because there's more, at least it would seem, economic mileage in Spence remaining champion. That's the easy thing to do. You know, the WBC and the other sanctioning bodies as well, to varying degrees, appear to make rules up as they go along. I remember when Vitaly Klitschko hadn't fought in several years, and he was still the full WBC champion. Eventually, of course, they made him champion emeritus, and then the belt was contested between Bermane Stiverne, the vacant belt that is, Bermane Stiverne and Chris Arreola. I think that's how it went back then. I don't think they fought for the interim belt, did they? I think they did fight for the full belt. Or maybe they did. Was their first fight maybe for the interim belt and then the second fight for the full belt? I forget now. But either way, Vitaly Klitschko was champion, full champion for a long time without even having fought for however many years, 18 months, 2 years, something like that. Now, that has to stop. There has to be one rule that stands for all WBC champions, rather than having this inconsistent situation where some champions get stripped or made champion emeritus or interim champion or whatever, champion in recess, when they haven't defended after a certain amount of time. But other champions, oh no, they're allowed to hold on to these belts seemingly indefinitely without fighting. And of course, Dylan White is complaining about that currently with regards to Tyson Fury. So yeah, I'd like to see more consistency, but I'm not holding my breath. Bottom line is, I don't trust the WBC. I don't trust PBC. And although Errol Spence is a fantastic fighter, at the end of the day, he wants to keep the belt. He wants to keep getting his bag. So if, in a hypothetical scenario, he had to fake an injury in order to do so, I wouldn't put it past him. Again, I'm not making any accusations, maybe. And it's also perfectly plausible and perfectly realistic that Errol Spence does have a genuine injury. Okay? Torn retinas, detached retinas, etc. are not unheard of in boxing. It's not something that most fighters are going to get, but there's still plenty of them about. Yeah? Plenty of fighters get these injuries. And they could be career-ending injuries in some instances. I hope that's not the case for Errol Spence, if this is indeed a genuine injury. But you know, there's so much skullduggery and underhandedness goes on in boxing that I can't blame anyone. For example, like Bernard Hopkins, for being suspicious when somebody pulls out with an injury. You can't blame people for being suspicious because there is so much underhanded stuff that goes on, you know? And this is why, as Bernard Hopkins said, I think even though there's no legal obligation to do so, and there shouldn't be any legal obligation to do so, but if I was in the position Spence is in as a fighter, understanding how shady the industry is, I would personally, if I was in his shoes, I would personally want to prove to the public that this injury is genuine. I would personally put the scans out there like Kell Brook did when he suffered the fractured orbital against Gennady Golovkin. He wanted to prove to people that he did really have that kind of injury. He put the scans out there. He didn't have to. You shouldn't be obligated to. That's his medical information and that should remain private. But if you choose to show it to the public, again, that will help to gain public confidence in what you're saying. It will show that, okay, there's skullduggery that goes on in boxing, but at least this fighter is somebody that we can maybe trust a bit more. Yeah. But then again, on the flip side of that, some people would say, well, if you show a scan of an injury one time, the fans are going to expect it from you every time. And therefore, if you do find yourself in a situation where you need to get out of a fight for whatever reason, and you want to fake an injury to do so, if you don't show a scan of the injury next time, they're going to say, well, hang on, this guy's not being consistent. Before he showed a scan, now he don't want to show a scan. What's going on here? That could look suspicious. Whereas if you never show scans for any of your injuries, you've got more plausible deniability. So anyway, let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. Come and join me on Patreon and access my weekly no-holds-barred, censorship-free podcast where we lift the lid on a wide range of controversial topics. It's not mainstream friendly, it's not politically correct, but that's the whole point. We dare to stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. Just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called Hatman Hot Topics. You'll gain access to a minimum of 2 hours of exclusive content every single week, including podcasts, videos, interviews, live stream Q&A sessions, as well as my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. Not to mention a vast back catalog of hundreds of hours of previous episodes. You can listen via the Patreon app with the option to download in high quality MP3. We've also got a Discord server where you can come and chat and hang out with myself and other members. There's no contract, no commitment, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.